Forest mysteries. The icy wind sliced through every fiber of Alex's battered frame, each breath crystallizing into a fleeting cloud in the frigid air. His legs buckled beneath him, slipping on the slick frost that coated the forest floor, forcing him to crawl forward with trembling limbs. His clothes, once resilient and warm, hung in tatters, stained with dirt and streaks of blood, clinging to his shivering body as if trying to hold him together. His fingers, numb and stiff from the cold, clenched and unclenched instinctively, seeking warmth that refused to come. The howl of the wind rattled the skeletal branches above, carrying distant, guttural echoes that seemed to mock his vulnerability. His gaze darted anxiously across the bleak landscape, desperately searching for any sign of shelter, a hollow, a fallen tree, anything that could provide refuge from the relentless storm. Snowflakes spun in furious spirals, blurring his vision and muffling sound, transforming the world into a swirling white abyss. Every step felt like wading through molasses, yet he pushed himself onward, driven by a primal instinct to survive. His legs faltered, nearly giving way, but he grabbed hold of a nearby, fallen trunk, trembling as he fought to stay upright. The ground beneath him was treacherous, coated with ice and hidden pitfalls that threatened to send him tumbling into the abyss. A sudden gust of wind intensified the snowstorm into a blinding frenzy, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. Panic surged through his chest, constricting his breath, but he forced himself to steady his nerves, to focus. His mind spun with doubts. Was this the end? Could he find a shred of safety before the cold claimed him? Each heartbeat thundered loudly, a relentless countdown echoing in his ears. Amidst the swirling whiteness, a faint depression in the snow caught his eye. Just a shallow hollow, perhaps a natural formation or the burrow of some creature. It beckoned like a fragile hope, a potential sanctuary. With hesitant, trembling movements, Alex staggered toward it, each step sluggish and uncertain. The wind shrieked, whipping snow into his face, stinging his eyes and freezing tears that threatened to freeze on his cheeks. His legs felt like lead, each movement a battle against despair and exhaustion. He finally collapsed into the hollow, curling into a tight ball to conserve what little warmth remained. His ragged breaths fogged the air as he pressed his face into the snow-softened earth, seeking comfort in its damp coolness. The storm's fury raged around him, but within this fragile enclave, a strange silence settled, an uneasy truce between him and the chaos outside. For a moment, hope flickered. Perhaps this tiny refuge would buy him a few precious moments to gather strength. Then a faint, almost imperceptible sound drifted from the shadows beyond the hollow. It was a whisper carried on the wind, a soft scrape, like claws dragging across bark or paws shifting snow. The noise was deliberate, cautious. Alex's senses sharpened, his body tensed instinctively. Was it curiosity or menace? His eyes widened, trying to pierce the swirling snow, but visibility was near zero. A sudden gust of wind sent a flurry of snow spiraling into the hollow, casting shifting shadows that danced on the periphery of his vision. The forest around him seemed to pulse with unseen life, shadows flickering just beyond reach. His pulse quickened, every nerve alert for movement. The thought of predators, wolves, bears, or something even more sinister, lurking nearby, gnawed at his mind. Yet, Amid the rising dread, a flicker of resolve ignited. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain still to listen. A faint sound reached his ears, soft, deliberate, almost like a cautious paw step or a gentle scrape. It was neither the frantic chase of an animal nor the frantic retreat of a predator. Instead, it seemed to emanate from curiosity or wariness. His eyes strained through the snow, trying to catch a glimpse of movement, but the swirling storm rendered everything indistinct. His numb fingers fumbled at the torn fabric of his jacket, searching desperately for any remnants of warmth. A scrap of cloth, a piece of bread, anything that could provide a moment's respite. But all he found was cold air and the echo of distant growls, or perhaps only the pounding of his own heart, racing in his chest. The snowstorm continued unabated, relentless in its assault, as if nature itself sought to erase all traces of his presence. Time stretched into an endless stretch of frozen silence, broken only by the occasional gust that sent shadows flickering like ghosts. Alex's mind swung between hope and despair, between the instinct to remain motionless and the urge to flee. His body begged for rest, but he knew surrender was death. Not yet, not while the shadows lurked just beyond his limited sight. Suddenly, the sound ceased. The forest fell into a suffocating silence, oppressive and absolute. Alex allowed himself a shallow, trembling breath, listening intently for any sign of movement. The storm's fury battered the landscape, but inside the hollow, a fragile calm took hold, a thin membrane shielding him from the chaos outside. Minutes, or perhaps hours, drifted by in the darkness. His eyelids grew heavy, exhaustion pressing down on his consciousness. The cold seeped into his bones, pulling him toward unconsciousness, yet he fought to stay awake. Somewhere deep within, a faint ember of hope flickered, an unspoken belief that survival was still within reach. That perhaps the shadows that stalked the storm's edge were not predators, but something else, something waiting, observing. As his eyelids fluttered closed for a moment, a distant, almost inaudible sound reached his ears, a rhythmic pounding, like a heartbeat echoing from the darkness beyond. It was so subtle that he questioned whether it was real or merely a trick of his exhausted mind. Yet, within that faint pulse, a spark of awareness ignited. Maybe he was not entirely alone in this frozen wilderness. A sudden shift in the wind brought a new, sharper scent, something metallic, unfamiliar, yet not entirely hostile. His eyes snapped open, alert. The faint heartbeat grew louder, more distinct, as if approaching. His mind raced. Could this be a rescuer or a predator? He tightened his grip on the ground, muscles tense, preparing for whatever was to come. The shadows flickered again, and with them, a figure emerged, cloaked in darkness, moving with deliberate caution. It paused at the edge of his sight, then stepped closer, revealing a glint of metal and a hint of purpose. Alex's breath hitched. His survival now depended not just on hiding, but on how he responded to this new presence. The figure drew nearer, and as the distance closed, Alex realized that this encounter might change everything. The storm raged on outside, but inside the hollow, a new chapter was beginning, one that could either lead to salvation or doom. His eyes fixed on the approaching silhouette, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, knowing that the outcome was no longer solely in his hands. A faint silhouette materialized from the shadows, its form blending seamlessly into the swirling snow. The biting wind carried a subtle rustling, making the thin trees sway and groan softly under the weight of winter. Alex's eyes darted toward the figure, every muscle tensed, his grip tightening on the rusted, battered knife he held defensively. His breath formed brief clouds, each exhale sharper in the frigid air, and the icy sting on his cheeks sharpened his senses to a razor's edge. He froze, muscles locking as a faint sound rippled through the snow, an almost imperceptible shuffle, like a cautious step. Every instinct urged him to stay alert, to prepare for an attack or to flee. His pounding heart echoed louder than the wind's mournful howl, a percussion of mounting unease. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, merging with the darkening woods that stretched behind the clearing, alive with silent threats. The snow fell silently now, muffling the world into a muted stillness broken only by the occasional snap of a branch or the whisper of frozen air. Alex's gaze swept the surrounding trees, searching for movement, for any sign of danger. His shoulders hunched instinctively as he pressed himself against the cold earth, trying to diminish his silhouette to become less noticeable. Every shallow breath fogged in the air, fading into the vast emptiness of the winter dusk. Suddenly, a subtle shift in the shadows drew his attention. A figure emerged, deliberate and measured. The silhouette was slender yet composed, moving with a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the hostile wilderness around him. The face was partially concealed by a hood or scarf, but piercing eyes shimmered with an unnatural calm, fixed intently on Alex. The figure paused at the edge of the clearing, eyes locking onto his trembling form. The atmosphere thickened, the silence stretching taut and heavy. Alex's mind raced. Was this an ally or an adversary? He tried to interpret the intent behind this silent watcher, but his thoughts spun in confusion. Every instinct screamed for him to run, to vanish into the forest's depths. Yet, his body refused to obey immediately, rooted by a strange mixture of fear, curiosity, and a flicker of hope. The figure took a cautious step forward. In that motion, a faint glow revealed a set of sharp features, calm, unyielding. The eyes, luminous in the dim light, seemed to hold a quiet understanding, neither overtly threatening nor welcoming. It was a silent challenge, an unspoken test of trust amid the icy silence. Alex's hand trembled, knuckles white on the cold handle of his knife. His gaze flicked downward, then back up, searching for any sign of hostility or peace. The figure's movements were slow, deliberate, almost patient. Snowflakes clung to her dark coat, dusting her with icy crystals as she approached. She stopped just a few paces away, her gaze never leaving his face. Her expression was unreadable, composed, almost serene, an odd contrast to the chaos of the winter landscape. Neither of them spoke, only the soft rustling of snow and the distant cry of a lone wolf breaking the silence. Alex's mind churned with conflicting impulses. Part of him wanted to shout, to demand answers, to defend himself fiercely. But another, more cautious instinct urged restraint, observation, listening. His body relaxed slightly, the tension easing just enough to spark a fragile flicker of trust. Maybe this was an opportunity, a chance to understand, to connect, to find a new way forward. The figure moved closer, slow, and deliberate. Her eyes held a mixture of curiosity and resolve. As she drew nearer, a faint glow revealed her features more clearly, calm, unyielding, yet strangely inviting. She didn't appear threatening, but her presence was undeniable, an embodiment of the wild, unpredictable forces that surrounded him. A moment of silent communication stretched between them. The snow continued its gentle descent, blanketing the clearing in white serenity. Alex's grip on the knife loosened, fingers curling instinctively around the handle, but no longer clutching tightly. His breath fogged the air again, mingling with the cold that seeped into his bones. In that fragile pause, something shifted within him. The tension in his chest eased further, replaced by a cautious hope. The woman's eyes softened momentarily, as if recognizing a shared struggle, a mutual vulnerability. She extended her hand, gloved, yet somehow inviting, not threatening. Alex hesitated, then slowly reached out. His fingertips brushed against her glove, feeling the rough texture beneath. A shiver ran through him, not just from the cold, but from an unspoken understanding. This brief encounter, fleeting as it was, marked a turning point. The wilderness was no longer merely a hostile expanse. It held whispers of connection, hints that survival might depend not only on strength, but also on trust forged in the most unlikely moments. As she withdrew her hand, Lena, the pack leader, turned slightly, glancing back into the shadows of the trees. Her posture was alert yet composed, as if she had delivered a silent message. She was watching, assessing, waiting, not as an enemy, but as a guardian of this frozen domain, a creature as much a part of the snow and silence as the pale moonlight that was beginning to pierce the cloud cover. Alex watched her retreat into the darkness, feeling a strange calm settle over him. For the first time since losing his way in this relentless winter, a fragile seed of hope took root. The snow kept falling, the night deepened, and somewhere within the shadows, a new understanding was emerging, one born of cautious trust and a recognition that even in the bleakest cold, life persisted quietly and stubbornly. This encounter had shifted the balance. Not only had Alex glimpsed a potential ally, but he also realized that survival might require more than just vigilance and weaponry. It demanded openness, patience, and a willingness to see beyond fear, lessons that might be the key to enduring the endless winter. The icy night pressed down on the small clearing, shadows stretching from the flickering glow of the dying fire. Alex sat motionless, eyes fixed on the dark silhouette of the surrounding woods, his breath forming fleeting clouds in the crisp air. The snow muffled every sound, yet he could sense the restless presence of the wolf pack nearby, their breath steaming into the cold, mingling with the scent of damp earth and pine. He stared into the darkness, uncertainty gnawing at him. Were the figures he saw shifting among the trees friends or foes? Their eyes gleamed faintly, like distant stars reflected in icy irises, watching, waiting. Their bodies curled into tight circles, a disciplined congregation radiating quiet strength. He could feel their unity, their calmness amid the chaos of the wilderness, and a hesitant hope stirred within him, fueled by the faint possibility of trust. His hands trembled slightly as he reached into his pocket, clutching the small piece of bread he had kept hidden, an almost insignificant fragment of dried meat and bread, barely enough to stave off hunger for a few more hours. But the act was deliberate, a fragile attempt to bridge the gap between suspicion and trust, a gesture born of necessity rather than confidence. He slowly extended his hand, offering the morsel toward the nearest wolf. The animal's eyes flicked to him, pupils narrowing slightly as it sniffed the air, then turned away. The others remained motionless, observing with quiet patience. Alex hesitated, feeling the weight of their collective silence, the unspoken question hanging in the cold night. Is this enough? Can I be trusted? A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the scent of cold pine and damp earth, mingling with the musky aroma of the wolves. Their breath formed misty clouds, curling into the darkness as if whispering secrets he could not understand. He remained still, waiting for some sign, any sign that his small offering had been accepted. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, cautiously, the younger wolf inched forward, ears flicking in tentative curiosity. Its nose touched the bread, then withdrew, looking back at the pack's leader, a tall, imposing female with keen eyes that radiated intelligence and calm authority. She observed him intently, muscles relaxed but alert, as if weighing his true intentions. Finally, Lena, the alpha, stepped forward with measured grace. Her sleek body moved smoothly across the snow, and her gaze fixed on him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. She paused just a few paces away, studying him carefully, shadows flickering across her face from the dying fire. Alex's heart pounded harder, but he kept his hands visible, lowering the bread slowly. His voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. "I don't mean you harm," he said, each word deliberate. The phrase felt insignificant, yet the sincerity behind it was palpable. He had nothing else to offer but his fragile hope, an offering born from desperation, not trust. Lena sniffed the air once more, then nudged the piece of bread with her nose. After a tense moment, she gently took it into her mouth, backing away slightly, an unspoken sign of acceptance. The rest of the pack shifted, some inching closer, others remaining still but alert, eyes flickering between him and Lena. A subtle change rippled through the wolf's demeanor. The tension that had gripped him moments before eased, replaced by a cautious flicker of possibility. They had not attacked. They had not fled. Instead, they responded, accepting, perhaps even understanding that his gesture was genuine. Alex exhaled slowly, a faint warmth spreading through him despite the cold. He knew the night was far from over. Danger still lurked in the shadows, but a small victory had been achieved. He had taken a tentative step towards something unfamiliar, trust, and in doing so, opened a door to a new kind of hope. The wolves settled closer, curling into a protective ring around him and the dying embers of the fire. Lena's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer before she lowered her head, joining her companions in silent vigilance. Their collective presence felt like an unspoken promise. They would watch over him, or at least stand guard through the long, dark hours. As the wind whispered through the trees, Alex turned his gaze upward, seeking some distant comfort amid the star-studded sky. His mind replayed the moment of surrender, the offering of food, the cautious acceptance, and realized that survival was no longer solely about endurance or fleeing danger. It was about learning to listen, to trust, even when every instinct screamed otherwise. A fragile flicker of hope ignited within him, resilient despite the cold. Whatever the coming hours held, he was no longer entirely alone. The wolves had chosen to stay, to be near. Their quiet companionship planted a seed of understanding, born from mutual necessity, cautious respect, and the unspoken promise of resilience shared in silence. Gradually, the pack drew closer, their bodies forming a protective circle around him. Lena's piercing eyes briefly met his. Then she lowered her head in a gesture of silent acknowledgement. The night stretched on, but Alex felt a new sense of connection, an awareness that perhaps he was beginning to belong somewhere, even in this frozen wilderness. The wind's icy breath continued to sweep through the trees, but Alex's gaze remained fixed on the stars, now tinged with a faint, newfound confidence. The darkness no longer felt quite so overwhelming. In the quiet company of the wolves, he had found a fragile thread of trust, one that might lead him to safety, or at least to a moment's respite in the long night. The midnight silence hung heavy over the snow-blanketed clearing, broken only by the faint shimmer of moonlight filtering through sparse branches. Shadows stretched long and still, blending into the darkness as the cold air bit into skin and fur alike. Alex crouched behind a fallen log, every muscle tensed, eyes flickering between the shifting shapes in the gloom. His breath formed fleeting clouds, each inhale sharp and quick, each exhale whispering into the stillness. Every sound was amplified, the crack of ice beneath paws, the distant rustle of branches, the faint scrape of claws against frozen earth, each one a reminder of the lurking threat. The pack's usual restless movement had stilled, their alertness palpable in the tense stillness. Alex could feel their presence nearby, eyes watching, muscles coiled, ready to spring. Lena's gaze, sharp and unwavering, flicked toward him briefly before she turned her head, ears perked, sensing something beyond the visible. Her body was low, muscles taut beneath her thick fur, every instinct honed on the darkness ahead. The tension in her stance signaled that danger was close, hidden in the night's embrace, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, a deep growl cut through the silence, not from the wolves, but from something larger, more primal. The sound vibrated through the cold air, causing a ripple of unease to ripple through the pack. Lena's ears flattened instinctively, her body stiffening as she emitted a warning growl, low and commanding. Her posture communicated readiness, a clear signal to the others that a threat had been identified. Alex's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to remain motionless. His fingers clenched around a small piece of dried meat, an offering from earlier, its fragile weight a tenuous lifeline. He remembered Lena's unwavering gaze earlier, the cautious trust she had shown. That fragile connection fueled his resolve, anchoring him amid the chaos. His mind raced, trying to decipher what kind of predator was approaching. Was it a wolf, or something even more dangerous? From the darkness emerged a pair of piercing eyes, glowing with an icy, unyielding light that reflected the moon's faint glow. The predator moved with calculated grace, claws scraping softly against the icy ground as it advanced. Its massive silhouette was cloaked in shadow, a formidable figure of menace and strength. The creature's breath fogged in the frigid air, each exhale a visible reminder of the relentless cold. Lena responded instantly, positioning herself between Alex and the approaching threat. Her body lowered further, tail flicking with restrained agitation. She let out a low growl, a warning that vibrated with authority. The pack responded instinctively, muscles tense, eyes fixed on the beast, ready to defend. The tension thickened, every heartbeat echoing loudly in the silent night. The predator paused, tail flicking once as it assessed the scene. Its glowing eyes shifted, scanning the group with a calculated patience. Claws scraped the ice again, more forcefully now, breaking the silence with a sharp rasp. Its head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air, detecting the scent of wolves, the faint trace of human presence. Each element was a puzzle, a sign to be deciphered. Alex's grip on the dried meat tightened, his mind desperately seeking a way to defuse the situation. He considered shouting, throwing the food, or making himself appear larger, but the predator's gaze was fixed, silent, and calculating. The creature's patience was unnerving. It was waiting for a sign of weakness or opportunity. The moment stretched painfully long, thick with anticipation and dread. Suddenly, the creature's eyes flicked away, and it took a slow, deliberate step back. Its claws scraped the ice again, retreating into the darkness. The beast lowered its head slightly, eyes still fixed on the pack, but no longer threatening. Its massive form lingered at the edge of visibility, a shadow of raw power and silent warning, retreating but not defeated. A collective exhale seemed to ripple through the wolves as they eased their stance, muscles relaxing but remaining alert. Lena's gaze remained fixed on the retreating figure, her body poised for any sudden move. The pack's low growls faded into a tense silence, broken only by the faint crunch of snow beneath their paws. Alex watched, heart pounding, a mixture of relief and unease washing over him. The predator's retreat was not an act of trust, but a calculated pause, perhaps testing, perhaps waiting for another opportunity. The threat had not vanished, but shifted, and with it, the fragile balance of safety and danger persisted. Lena's eyes lingered on him longer now, her gaze searching, as if silently assessing his resolve. The night's darkness seemed to press in tighter, yet a new understanding blossomed within him. He realized that survival depended not only on strength, but on patience, respect, and reading the silent signals of the wild. Trust was fragile, but it was also essential. As the predator disappeared into the shadows, the pack gradually regrouped around Lena. She nudged a younger wolf gently, then turned her gaze toward Alex, her expression unreadable but somehow softer. The silence returned, heavy and contemplative, yet filled with unspoken resilience. Alex remained crouched, steadying his breath, watching Lena's calm figure. The flicker of trust in her eyes, subtle but real, offered a quiet reassurance. The night had claimed another fleeting moment of peace, but he knew this calm was temporary. The wilderness had tested him once again, and though he had survived, the danger was never truly gone. The weight of the cold pressed down, but within it, a faint spark of hope flickered. Amid the shadows, he began to understand the unspoken language of trust and strength that the wild creatures had always communicated, silent, enduring, unbreakable. The first light of dawn seeped through the sparse branches, casting a pale, icy glow over the snow-blanketed wilderness. The air was crisp and motionless, each breath crystallizing into fleeting clouds that dissolved almost instantly. Alex moved with caution, each step muffled by the thick frost and frozen snow beneath his boots. His muscles, previously trembling from exhaustion, now felt steadier, infused with a faint flicker of renewed strength. The night's ordeal had drained him, but his survival instinct pushed him forward, urging him to keep going. He tracked the faint paw prints ahead, each imprint a silent guide through the icy expanse. The snow was hard and crunching underfoot, amplifying every step in the stillness. Occasionally, a gust of wind swept through, stirring the branches and scattering a fine dusting of powder across the ground. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft rustle of fur and the rhythmic crunching of paws a few meters ahead. Lena led the pack, her sleek body moving with purpose and grace. Her gaze was fixed straight ahead, eyes sharp and alert. The other wolves formed a loose formation behind her, their bodies tense, but relaxed in the familiarity of their march. Alex kept a few paces behind, trying to synchronize his breathing with theirs, feeling the weight of their trust pressing down on him. He wondered if he deserved it. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, gratitude, suspicion, hope. These animals had saved him from the predator, from the icy grip of despair. Yet he questioned their motives. Were they guiding him out of genuine kindness? Or was this merely their instinctual drive to follow the strongest leader? The question gnawed at him, but he dared not voice it. Trust was fragile in this frozen world, and any misstep could be fatal. The cold sharpened his senses, making every sound seem exaggerated. The distant crack of a branch, the faint whistle of wind through the pines, the soft whisper of snow settling. He inhaled deeply, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Despite his physical recovery, a new moral dilemma took root. Could he rely on these wild creatures? Could he truly trust their intentions? Or was this alliance born solely out of necessity? Suddenly, Lena halted abruptly, her body stiffening. The others responded instantly, dropping into alert stances, ears perked and muscles tense. Alex froze, eyes darting between the wolves, sensing the shift in atmosphere. A faint, unfamiliar scent drifted to him. Something off, something wrong. His heart quickened as he scanned the surroundings, instinctively sensing impending danger. From behind a cluster of snow-laden bushes, a low growl rumbled, guttural and menacing. Lena's ears flicked up, her hackles rising as she stepped protectively in front of the others. The pack's eyes narrowed, pupils dilating in the cold morning light. The growl grew louder, approaching steadily but silently, until a massive shadow emerged at the edge of their vision. A formidable predator, its dark form blending seamlessly into the winter gloom. The beast moved with a predatory grace, eyes glowing with hunger and intelligence. Its presence radiated threat, a silent warning that froze the very air around them. The wolves responded instinctively, backing slightly but maintaining their vigilant stance. Lena let out a low, warning growl, her fur bristling as she positioned herself defensively. Alex's grip on his weapon tightened, his muscles coiling with tension. His eyes flicked to Lena, seeking reassurance, but also trying to gauge the creature's intentions. The predator's gaze was fixed, calculating, as it stepped closer, muscles rippling beneath its dark coat. The cold dawn light reflected off its sleek fur, emphasizing its lethal elegance. Time stretched painfully. The silence thickened, broken only by the predator's faint movements and the steady, cautious breathing of the wolves. Alex's mind raced. Was this creature merely passing through, or had it detected weakness? He knew that panic would only make things worse. Instead, he focused on the subtle cues, the slight shift in the predator's posture, Lena's unwavering gaze, the faint scent of danger lingering in the air. He remembered lessons from countless survival stories. Calmness in chaos was crucial. Instead of succumbing to fear, he deliberately relaxed his stance, exhaling slowly to steady his nerves. He took a cautious step backward, matching Lena's composed patience, trying to appear non-threatening. His eyes remained fixed on the beast, measuring its movements, waiting for the right moment to act if needed. The predator hesitated, then, with a low growl that vibrated through the cold air, it turned its massive head and melted back into the shadows. The pack exhaled collectively, the tension easing just enough for Lena to relax her stance. The wolves resumed their march, more alert than before, but unbroken in their focus. Alex watched them go, a mixture of relief and unease flooding his chest. This encounter had revealed a harsh truth. Trust was a fragile, precious thing, easily shattered by a single misstep. Yet he also saw the resilience of these creatures, their instinct to survive, their loyalty to the pack, and their capacity to face danger head-on. As they pressed onward, Lena's steady lead became a silent promise of guidance, a reminder that even in the bleakest, coldest moments, some forces of nature fought fiercely for life. The snow crunched beneath their paws and boots, each step taking him closer to an uncertain future. The landscape remained unforgiving, but within him grew a quiet resolve, an understanding that trust, once earned, could be a shield against the darkness lurking beyond the dawn. He glanced at Lena, her eyes briefly meeting his, and felt a flicker of something new. Hope intertwined with caution. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but perhaps, just perhaps, he was no longer entirely alone. The encounter had shifted his perspective. He now recognized the importance of resilience and the subtle power of trust, even in the harshest conditions. With renewed determination, Alex tightened his grip on his weapon, prepared to face whatever came next. The landscape stretched endlessly before him, but his internal world had changed. He carried new knowledge, a deeper understanding of survival, and a cautious belief that alliances, fragile as they were, could be the key to enduring the darkness. The snow-laden trail wound deeper into the forest, the narrow path uneven beneath their cautious steps. Pale morning light filtered weakly through the thick canopy, casting fractured shadows on the icy ground. A sharp wind cut through the branches, tugging at their clothing and stinging exposed skin, while frost clung stubbornly to Alex's beard and eyelashes. Each breath crystallized instantly, filling his lungs with cold, biting air that heightened every sensation. Lena paused briefly, her head lifting as she scrutinized the faint tracks ahead. Her nose twitched, ears flicked in the breeze. Then she nudged him gently with her snout, a subtle signal to proceed. Alex hesitated, eyeing the trail that seemed to vanish into the thicket, uncertainty flickering in his mind. His doubts resurfaced. Was it wise to follow her? Could he trust her instincts? His thoughts tangled, doubt and instinct battling. Why push forward now? Why not halt or turn back? Yet, the pack moved steadily, their silence and confidence anchoring him. Lena's unwavering presence, the calm strength she radiated, offered a silent reassurance. Despite his lingering hesitations, he took a tentative step, then another, following her into the shadowed woods. The wind grew colder, biting through his layers, forcing him to clutch his coat tighter. His fingers numbed as he grasped a rough branch for balance, eyes fixed on the trail ahead. The path twisted and dipped, crossing patches of ice that shimmered dangerously under the weak sunlight. Every step was a gamble, every sound amplified. The crack of frozen twigs, the faint rustling of snow sliding from branches, the distant caw of a raven. He kept glancing at Lena, seeking a sign of reassurance. She moved with deliberate calm, her paws silent on the icy surface. The pack's collective awareness was subdued but alert, ears pricked, bodies tense. He sensed their shared focus on the unseen hazards ahead, their unity a fragile tether preventing him from spiraling into doubt. Suddenly, a gust swept through the trees, scattering loose snow into the air like icy confetti. Alex flinched, instinctively ducking as a flurry of frost brushed his face. His breath caught, eyes watering. He watched Lena's ears flick forward, her body stiffening. She lowered her head, nose to the ground, scenting the trail more intently. Her posture shifted, less cautious, more purposeful. Following her lead, Alex pressed onward, footsteps crunching softly on the frozen earth. The trail widened gradually, leading into a small clearing. Shadows stretched across the snow, and in the center, a faint glow beckoned. An inexplicable mixture of hope and apprehension stirred within him. Was this Lena's destination, or a trap? As they approached, the terrain flattened and the trees thinned. The weak sunlight grew stronger, filtering through gaps in the canopy and illuminating a patch of open space. The wind eased briefly and silence settled. He hesitated at the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning for movement or danger. Lena moved confidently, her gaze fixed on the center. In the middle of the clearing, a faint outline emerged. Something unfamiliar, yet oddly inviting. A small, snow-covered mound, perhaps a fallen log or a natural formation, marked the end of their journey. He stepped cautiously closer, muscles tense, heart pounding softly. A sudden shift in the air made him freeze. The snow beneath his feet shifted subtly, and his eyes caught a flicker of movement, something just beyond his line of sight. His breath hitched again, every nerve alert. Shadows rippled across the snow, hinting at something more than just the cold and trees. Lena stopped abruptly, ears pricking forward, her body tense with focus. Her nose twitched again, sensing, feeling. The pack around him tensed, ears upright, eyes alert. The moment stretched, thick with anticipation. Then a faint crack like a twig snapping made him spin around. From the thicket emerged a large predator, its eyes gleaming ominously in the dim light. The beast moved silently, muscles rippling beneath thick fur, jaws slightly parted to reveal sharp teeth. It advanced with calculated grace, its presence predatory and relentless. Alex's mind raced, his body tensed, instinct urging retreat, but Lena stepped protectively in front of him, growling low, a warning. The pack responded instantly, positioning themselves defensively, forming a formidable barrier. The predator paused, assessing the scene, then snarled gutturally. It lunged forward, but Lena, with a fierce surge of energy, intercepted it, her growl echoing through the clearing, an unyielding defiance. This time, the predator hesitated, eyes narrowing. Instead of attacking, it circled slowly, calculating its next move, waiting for an opening. The pack held their ground, muscles taut, ready to strike if necessary. Alex stared, a mixture of dread and awe swirling within. The tension was palpable, each second feeling stretched on the cusp of violence. His fists clenched, muscles tight, yet he refused to scream or flee. His gaze remained fixed on Lena and the others, their unity a fragile shield against the lurking threat. Suddenly, the predator let out a low growl, then slowly retreated into the shadows, melting away with a final glare. Silence returned, heavy and thick. The pack exhaled collectively, their breathing heavy but steady. Lena turned her head briefly to meet Alex's eyes, conveying silent strength and reassurance. He exhaled slowly, shoulders relaxing as the immediate danger passed. But beneath that calm, a shift occurred. The adrenaline, exhaustion, and fear had reignited a primal instinct, trust in Lena's leadership and in the pack's resilience. He realized that survival depended not solely on flight, but on understanding and respecting the threats lurking in the wilderness. As they resumed their cautious trek deeper into the woods, Alex's gaze lingered on the trail ahead. The faint glow of the clearing, the shadowy threat, everything had changed. The fear that shadowed him at the start was now mingled with a newfound resolve. The wilderness had challenged him again, revealing its brutal beauty and unforgiving honesty. He understood that the journey was far from over. Yet, within the icy landscape, something had awakened, an ember of trust, a flicker of hope. The trail ahead remained uncertain, but he was no longer alone in facing it. The pack's unity and Lena's unwavering guidance had transformed his perspective, forging a fragile but growing confidence that, together, they could endure whatever lay ahead. The pack came to an abrupt stop as snow muffled their paws, the cold air sharp and biting. Lena's gaze was fixed on the distant horizon, her ears twitching at every faint sound carried by the shifting wind. The atmosphere grew tense, the silence heavy with anticipation. The wind carried a subtle hum, an indistinct murmur of voices, the distant thrum of machinery, or perhaps the rustling of snow stirred by unseen activity. Alex froze, breath fogging in the cold, muscles tensed as he scanned the bleak landscape ahead, every nerve alert for signs of threat or hope. Lena shifted her posture slightly, ears pricking forward as she listened intently. Her body was rigid, muscles coiled with readiness, yet her face remained composed. The others in the pack paused, heads lifting in unison, sensing the same faint vibrations in the air. The collective silence pressed down, a shared understanding that this moment could alter everything, either leading to salvation or imminent danger. Alex's eyes flicked from Lena to the open field beyond the tree line. The trail they had followed earlier was now obliterated, snow-covered, indistinct. The landscape stretched out in quiet, but the distant sounds hinted at activity nearby. His mind raced. Was it human presence? Or just the echoes of nature? The uncertainty gnawed at him, each new sound feeding a growing sense of unease. He shifted his weight, feeling the sting of cold joints, trying to interpret the signs around him. The faint hum grew clearer, an engine idling, distant voices speaking muffled words, the metallic scrape of machinery. His stomach clenched. Could this be rescue? Or hunters? Or something even more threatening? The possibilities spun in his mind, each more unsettling than the last. A sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, tugging at fur and clothing, sharpening the sounds. The hum intensified, voices calling in low, muffled tones, the rhythmic clatter of machinery, an unnatural chorus that set his nerves on edge. He felt the impulse to retreat, to hide, but the pack's disciplined stance kept him rooted. Lena moved forward, nose to the snow, her senses sharp. She sniffed deliberately, then looked back at him, her eyes narrowing with focus. Her body language was clear: trust the trail, trust your instincts. She nudged him gently with her snout, a silent prompt to proceed. Yet, her gaze betrayed a flicker of suspicion, as if she sensed danger lurking just beyond sight. The faint sounds of distant activity grew louder, more defined, closer. The low murmur of voices, machinery humming steadily, footsteps crunching through snow, an ominous symphony hinting at either salvation or peril. Alex's heart pounded, each beat echoing in his ears. Every instinct urged him to flee, to find cover, to hide from whatever was approaching. But Lena's calm, unwavering presence anchored him. She moved cautiously toward the trail, nose low, scrutinizing every footprint, broken branch, and disturbed snow. Her movements were deliberate, methodical, an attempt to gauge the threat's nature. He hesitated, torn between the primal urge to escape and the fragile trust forming inside him. The pack had led him through treacherous terrain, through doubts and dangers, forging a bond of reliance. Now, standing at the edge of a new threat, he faced a pivotal choice: follow Lena into the unknown or retreat into shadows, abandoning everything he had fought for. Lena flicked her tail sharply, then nudged him again, more insistently this time. Her eyes held unwavering confidence, as if silently saying, "This is the way." Her calmness seeped into him, a quiet reminder that surrendering to uncertainty might be his only chance. He took a deep breath, the cold air stinging his lungs, and steadied himself. The distant sounds intensified, voices calling in muffled tones, machinery humming with a steady rhythm, footsteps approaching rapidly. The faint trail beckoned, fragile yet compelling, into a world he couldn't fully understand but could no longer ignore. His hand trembled as he reached for his pack, fingers tightening around the strap, hesitating briefly to steady himself. He looked into Lena's eyes, seeking reassurance, finding only silent resolve. A shiver ran down his spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that everything was about to change. The landscape stretched before him, transformed from an uncertain wilderness into a threshold of new possibilities. With a deliberate nod, he stepped forward, trusting Lena's lead. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he moved into the open, toward the faint trail and the unknown beyond. The sounds of voices and machinery grew louder, more insistent, an echo of potential rescue or impending danger. The fragile thread of opportunity stretched before him, demanding courage and resolve. Lena's pack followed seamlessly, shadows melting into the winter landscape. The wind carried a final whisper, a promise of what lay ahead, whether hope or peril. As Alex advanced, he felt the weight of fear and hope intertwining, ready to face whatever awaited just beyond the trees. The situation had shifted. He was no longer passive, but active, stepping into the unknown with cautious determination. This new knowledge, this decision to trust, marked a turning point. The pack's awareness of external threats had heightened, and Alex's understanding of a situation deepened. No longer merely surviving, he was now moving toward a potential resolution, toward answers that could redefine everything he believed or feared. The landscape, the sounds, and his own resolve had all changed, setting the stage for whatever awaited next. Lena's ears twitched at the faint crackle through the dimming light. Her pack remained motionless, eyes darting between the shadows and the horizon, muscles coiled with alertness. Alex's gaze was fixed, his jaw clenched as the weight of the moment pressed down on him. The cold air bit into his lungs, fogging his breath, while his fingers trembled against the rough fabric of his coat. Just beyond the tree line, a flicker of movement betrayed the presence of humans. Hunters, judging by their deliberate, calculated motions. They moved with purpose, setting traps with practiced precision. The scent of burnt wood and damp earth mingled in the air, a reminder of the danger lurking nearby. It was a fragile, deadly game, and any misstep could be fatal. Alex's mind spun with conflicting instincts. Every fiber of his being urged silence, yet his heart pounded with urgency. The pack had placed their trust in him to protect them, to navigate this perilous terrain. Now, the decision loomed. Should he warn the others or remain hidden, risking the entire group's safety? Lena's sharp gaze snapped toward him, a silent challenge. Her body tensed, ears flattening as she emitted a low warning growl. Her eyes conveyed a mixture of caution and hope, hope that he would choose wisely. The wind shifted again, carrying a faint metallic scent from the traps, sharpening the tension. A figure detached from the others, inspecting the snares with careful movements. Alex's eyes flicked to her, an older woman, perhaps, or a seasoned hunter, unaware of the watchful eyes nearby. Memories of past encounters flickered through his mind. Moments of shared risk, trust earned through silent understanding. Could he afford to stay silent now? Or was silence itself a betrayal? He hesitated, then took a cautious step forward. His mind raced, weighing the risks of action versus inaction. The faint sound of fabric crumpling broke the tense silence as he reached into his pocket. Carefully, he pulled out a small, worn piece of cloth, something he kept for moments like this. With deliberate calm, he crumpled it and tossed it away from the hunter's direction, creating a distraction. The fabric landed softly on the underbrush, and the faint rustle drew the hunter's attention. One of them paused, squinting into the shadows, alerted but uncertain. Lena's ears twitched again, and she emitted a low, commanding growl, signaling her pack to stay alert. The hunters' movements slowed as they focused on the disturbance, their gaze sweeping the area. Alex's muscles tensed, ready to bolt if necessary. He kept his stance firm, trusting Lena's instincts and the silent support of the pack behind him. The moment stretched, thick with anticipation. Suddenly, the lead hunter signaled to the others, and they resumed their work, unaware that their attention had been diverted. The flicker of movement behind the trees indicated Lena's pack had survived this encounter, for now. The immediate threat was temporarily thwarted. Alex exhaled slowly, relief washing over him as the tension eased. Yet, beneath that calm, a new understanding took root. The hunters might return, more cautious and better prepared. The fragile trust he had with Lena deepened, but the stakes had shifted. He had learned that even a small distraction could buy time, but not necessarily safety. He looked at Lena, noting her alert posture and sharp gaze. Her silent gesture conveyed a message. The wilderness was unpredictable, and survival depended on constant vigilance. He nodded subtly, acknowledging her unspoken guidance. As darkness thickened, he realized that his journey was far from over. The line between friend and foe had blurred, and every decision now carried weight. Stepping back into the shadows, he felt a cautious resolve settle within him, an awareness that even in peril, small acts of ingenuity and courage could turn the tide. In the quiet that followed, Alex's perspective had shifted. He understood that trust was fragile, and every choice could tip the balance. The encounter had revealed new vulnerabilities, his own hesitation, the pack's reliance on him, but also a glimmer of hope. He had gained a crucial piece of knowledge. The hunter's persistence meant they would return, but so did his capacity to adapt and outthink them. Lena's eyes met his, a silent acknowledgement of their shared understanding. The pack's safety was still uncertain, but now they had a moment's respite. The shadows stretched long, and with them, a realization. The wilderness was a battlefield of subtle shifts, and survival depended on quick thinking, unity, and the courage to act when it mattered most. He stepped further into the darkness, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The game had changed. He was no longer just a passive observer, but an active participant in this deadly dance. Every decision from now on would shape not only his fate, but that of the pack. The faint hope flickered brighter, guiding him forward into the night, where danger lurked but opportunity also awaited. The moon cast a faint, silvery glow over the snow-covered edge of the forest, shadows stretching long and twisted across the icy terrain. A sharp wind sliced through the silence, carrying distant echoes of unseen threats as Alex moved cautiously, every step deliberate, muscles taut from fatigue, yet driven by a fragile hope. Hope that the hunters might be more than just enemies, perhaps even allies, or at least potential allies in this harsh wilderness. He paused behind a thicket of gnarled, leafless branches, peering through the sparse foliage at the flickering glow of a fire and muffled voices beyond the tree-line. The faint crackle of the campfire mixed with hurried whispers, tense and guarded. His breath fogged in the cold air, and his hands trembled slightly. But he forced himself to stay calm, trying to project non-threatening intent. His mind raced, weighing his options, trust strangers or risk everything by staying hidden. Clutching a small, weathered piece of wood he'd found earlier, Alex stepped out from concealment, trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. His palms were sweaty, but he kept his voice steady as he called into the darkness. "Please, I mean no harm," he said, voice trembling but clear. The words sounded hollow in the biting cold, yet they carried the weight of genuine desperation. A tense silence stretched out before a gravelly voice responded, cautious and rough. "Who's there? Show yourself." Alex took a careful step forward, raising his empty hands in a universal gesture of peace. "I'm just a traveler, lost, cold, and hungry. I don't want trouble. I only seek shelter or help." The flickering firelight revealed shadowy figures emerging from the darkness, tall, bundled silhouettes with weapons slung across their shoulders, eyes wary and alert. Several paused, hands hovering near their belts, while one, a broader man with a weathered face, stepped closer, suspicion evident in his stance. Lost, huh? That's what they all say. What do you want? We don't take kindly to strangers wandering here. Alex's throat tightened, but he forced himself to keep his composure. I saw your fire. I thought maybe I could trade something or just rest for a moment. I don't mean to intrude. The man studied him for a long moment, then nodded toward the others. Stay where you are. Don't make any sudden moves. The tension in the air thickened, broken only by the distant howl of wolves and the crackling of the fire. Alex's mind spun. He knew these men could mistake him for a threat or even prey. Yet, he couldn't afford to show weakness now. His eyes darted to the shadows, searching for any sign of a way out, any indication they might listen. Look, he pressed, voice firmer this time. I'm not here to fight. I've been surviving in these woods for days. I've seen things I can't explain. I don't want trouble with you. I just need help, or at least a moment to explain. One of the hunters, a younger man with sharp features, stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You think you could just walk in and say that? We've seen enough strangers in these woods to know how it ends. Another figure, older and cloaked in a thick fur coat, raised a hand to halt his companions. Hold on. Maybe he's telling the truth. He looks like he's been through hell. The leader hesitated, exchanging glances with the others, then looked back at Alex. What exactly do you want? We're not known for charity. Just shelter, Alex repeated, voice edged with a mixture of hope and exhaustion. Some warmth, a moment to rest. I can't go on like this, freezing, starving, hunted by the cold and the night. I swear I won't cause trouble. The group exchanged uncertain glances. The firelight flickered across their faces, revealing lines of weariness and suspicion. The old man's gaze lingered on Alex, searching for honesty. Suddenly, a low growl emanated from the shadows behind the hunters, causing them to freeze. Heads turned toward the darkness, ears straining. The distant sound of paw steps and the faint shimmer of movement suggested danger was nearby. Possibly the same predators that had stalked Alex earlier, or something even more menacing. The leader's grip on his rifle tightened. What's that? He muttered, voice tense. The younger man looked around nervously. Could be animals, or more trouble. Alex saw their hesitation, the flicker of doubt crossing their faces. He stepped forward slowly, lowering his hands and speaking more earnestly. Listen, I don't want to start a fight. I'm just trying to survive. If you help me, I could be gone at dawn. I won't cause trouble. The old man studied him carefully, then finally nodded. You're lucky we're cautious, but luck can run out. He paused, weighing his options, then spoke with quiet authority. All right, stay close, but keep your hands where we can see them. No sudden moves. Relief flooded through Alex, but he kept his expression neutral. The night was far from over, and danger still lurked in the shadows. Yet, a faint spark of hope ignited within him. Perhaps these wary men weren't his enemies after all. As they led him toward the fire, Alex's gaze drifted beyond the flickering flames to the dark silhouette of the forest. Shadows shifted beneath the moonlight, and distant howls faded into silence. He realized that this fragile moment could pivot his fate, either toward salvation or disaster. Still, He stepped forward, trusting his instincts and the slim chance that these strangers might see him not as prey, but as a fellow survivor in the unforgiving cold. In that moment, the balance shifted. The hunter's suspicion softened slightly, and Alex's understanding deepened. This encounter could be the beginning of an alliance or a deadly mistake. The cold night pressed in around them, but now, amid the uncertainty, a faint hope flickered brighter than ever. The first light of dawn seeped through the dense canopy, casting fractured shadows across the snow-covered ground. The air was still, heavy with the scent of pine and cold earth, as Alex settled onto a fallen log, muscles stiff from hours of tension. His breath formed fleeting clouds, blending with the faint aroma of smoke from the dying campfire. Around him, the forest seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the next move. The distant rustling of branches and the subtle snap of twigs under cautious paws broke the silence. A pack of wolves encircled the clearing at a respectful distance, their ears twitching and noses to the wind, alert but patient. Their eyes, sharp and watchful, flicked between Alex and the darkening woods beyond. Shadows flickered across the snow, cast by the flickering flames of the campfire, which had dwindled to embers. Alex hesitated, his fingers trembling as he slowly raised his hands in a gesture of peace. He knew that sudden movements could provoke attack, so he kept his voice low and steady. "I mean no harm," he whispered, voice hoarse from hours of silence and cold. "I'm lost. I need help." The wolves' ears twitched, and Lena, the alpha, stepped forward with deliberate calm. Her coat shimmered in the morning light, a regal presence amid the frost. She paused, then lowered her head slightly, a sign of peace, and studied him with unblinking eyes. Her gaze was steady, conveying both curiosity and authority. Slowly, she nudged her nose toward the ground, signaling acceptance. From the shadows, a younger wolf approached hesitantly, nose twitching as it sniffed the air around Alex. The man's hand, trembling, reached out and gently stroked the creature's fur. The wolf responded with a cautious lick, an acknowledgement of trust. It was a fragile victory, a small step in bridging the vast divide between human and beast. Meanwhile, the hunters watched from behind their makeshift shelter, their weapons lowered but their eyes filled with suspicion. The middle-aged man, with a face weathered by years in the wilderness, stepped forward cautiously, rifle in hand. His gaze flicked between Alex and the wolves, weighing the risks. His voice was gravelly but steady. "You're lucky we found you before something else did. The forest's not kind to the unwary. We've seen signs of trackers, others less friendly. You're fortunate we're not hostile." Alex nodded slowly, feeling a flicker of relief. His shoulders relaxed marginally, though the tension still lingered. "I understand. That's why I came here, to find safety, to escape what's chasing me. I don't want to cause trouble, just to survive." The hunter's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded. "You're lucky we're passing through. We're heading north to a settlement. It's dangerous terrain, especially now. You can come with us, but don't expect us to wait if you falter. Strength and resolve are what count." A gust of wind swept through the clearing, stirring the snow and causing the flames to dance. The wolf beside Alex rubbed against his leg, grounding him in the moment. The silence stretched again, filled with the sounds of awakening nature. Distant bird calls, the rustling of branches, the faint crunch of snow under paws and boots. Alex looked at the hunters, then at Lena, whose calm gaze remained fixed on the horizon. The unspoken trust between them was fragile, built on cautious understanding. Yet beneath the surface, a shift was occurring. The realization that he was no longer entirely alone, that allies might be found in the most unlikely of places, sparked a faint glimmer of hope. He straightened his posture, drawing strength from within. The fear still lurked at the edges of his mind, but it was tempered by a newfound resolve. He had survived the worst, learned to read the whispers of the wilderness, and found unexpected companionship. Now he faced a choice: cling to doubt or step forward into the uncertain promise of safety. As the hunters began preparing to move, Lena nudged her pack toward him, a subtle gesture of trust. Alex reached out and gently stroked the wolf's fur again, feeling the coarse texture beneath his fingertips, a reminder of the wildness still surrounding him, and perhaps within him. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp, cold air. The forest had tested him, broken him down, but also begun to mend the cracks. The boundary between friend and foe, danger and refuge, blurred in this fragile moment of peace. Trust was delicate, something to nurture carefully, with every step taken in respect for the wilderness. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. Alex's eyes widened as a figure emerged from the shadows. Another hunter, but this one tense and wary, clutching a rifle with a trembling hand. His face was gaunt, eyes darting nervously. He had been trailing the group, attempting to catch up after falling behind. The newcomer's presence shifted the dynamic. The initial calm shattered as suspicion flared anew. The hunters instinctively raised their weapons, and Alex instinctively tensed. But Lena stepped forward, her posture commanding. She let out a low, authoritative growl, signaling her dominance and caution. The intruder hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly, eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I saw the fire," he said quickly, voice strained. "Thought you might need help. I've been tracking you. Something's out there, following us." The revelation ignited a new urgency. The forest silence was broken by distant howls, low and menacing. The group's tentative trust was tested anew. Alex's mind raced. What was out there? Was it the same threat that had been chasing him, or something else entirely? Lena's gaze hardened. "Then we move now. No dilas. We can't afford to be caught unaware." Her voice was firm, but her eyes betrayed concern. The wolves around them shifted, alert and ready. The new hunter's presence made it clear. The danger was real, and the forest's secrets were darker than they'd imagined. The fragile alliance was now under threat, but it also revealed a shared resolve to survive whatever lurked beyond the trees. As they hurried into the dense woods, Alex felt the weight of uncertainty lift slightly. He was no longer just a lost individual. He was part of a group united by necessity. The trust forged in this dawn might be fleeting, but it was enough to keep him moving forward. He glanced back once more at the fading glow of the campfire, then ahead into the shadows. The woods stretched endlessly, whispering stories of survival and transformation. Somewhere in the darkness, the lurking threat awaited, but so did the chance for new beginnings. His mind settled on one thought. The wilderness was no longer just a place of danger. It was a crucible, shaping him anew, testing his strength, forging bonds, and revealing that sometimes surrendering control was the only way to truly survive. Alex moved cautiously along the narrow trail. each step deliberate and measured as the snow crunched softly beneath his boots. The harsh glare of sunlight reflected off the icy surface, casting shimmering, jagged shadows that stretched across the frozen expanse. His muscles ached with fatigue, every movement reminding him of the relentless cold and the distance he had traveled. Yet a strange clarity settled over his mind, an awareness that had been absent for days. The silence around him was oppressive, broken only by the faint whistle of wind threading through sparse, frost-covered trees. He paused, lifting his face toward the pale sky, feeling the biting cold nip at his cheeks. His eyes scanned the terrain with cautious intent, searching for signs of recent activity or hidden dangers. The landscape remained deceptively still, but he knew better than to trust appearances. Memories flickered, Lena's steady gaze, the silent vigilance of the pack, moments when trust had been forged amid the icy wilderness. A faint, almost involuntary smile touched his lips, fleeting but genuine, as he recalled her words. Asterisk, trust the trail. Listen to what the land whispers. Asterisk. Initially, he had doubted her advice, dismissing it as superstition or wishful thinking. But now, after days of following the subtle signals of the environment, cracks in the ice, shifts in the wind, he realized that the wilderness was communicating with him. Every subtle movement, every faint sound carried meaning. The land was no longer just a hostile obstacle, but a living guide, if only he learned to interpret its language. Feeling the sting of cold on his cheeks, Alex lowered himself onto a snowbank, pressing his palms against the icy surface to steady himself. His legs protested with dull ache, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the faint frost patterns etched onto a small, frozen branch nearby. He gently brushed snow off its surface, studying the intricate formations, seeking comfort in their delicate complexity. Yet beneath this serenity lurked unseen dangers. The unpredictable terrain, concealed crevices, and shifting ice that could swallow him at any moment. A faint sound drew his attention, an almost imperceptible crack, like a distant ice sheet shifting or a subtle rumble beneath the snow. His senses sharpened instantly. He froze, ears straining, eyes narrowing as he tried to pinpoint the source. Nothing visible broke the endless white horizon, only the quiet vastness stretching in all directions. His grip tightened around a small stone in his pocket, a keepsake from the wilderness, a reminder of lessons learned and tools that might yet serve him. A sudden shift in the wind carried a faint, unfamiliar scent, damp earth mixed with cold metal. It wasn't threatening, but it signaled change. The land was alive, unpredictable, and he had to remain alert. His trust in Lena's teachings had grown, but now it was tested by the subtle cues of the environment, urging him to adapt quickly. He took a deep breath, feeling the frigid air fill his lungs and steady his nerves. As he exhaled, a faint, almost inaudible vibration rippled through the snow beneath his feet. His eyes flicked toward the horizon, where snow-laden treetops broke the pale sky's line. Beyond lay the outskirts of civilization, an elusive promise of safety and warmth. Yet rushing forward was a risk he couldn't afford. The wilderness demanded patience, respect, and careful observation. He remembered Lena's words: listen, adapt, trust. Gradually, he pushed himself upright, muscles stiff but purposeful. The trail ahead appeared slightly clearer, less tangled with fallen branches and patches of treacherous ice. Every step was deliberate, each movement calculated to avoid unseen hazards. He skirted shallow cracks and icy patches, aware that a single misstep could plunge him into a hidden crevasse or trigger a dangerous avalanche. As he advanced, his thoughts turned to the pack. Lena's leadership had transformed his perception of this frozen land. They were not merely predators or threats, but guardians of a fragile balance. The wolves had shown him that survival depended on harmony with nature, on reading its signals and respecting its boundaries. Trust was earned, not given blindly. A distant, muffled rumble interrupted his focus, a low, rolling sound like shifting ice or distant thunder. His senses sharpened further. He moved toward it cautiously, feeling the vibrations beneath his feet. It was a reminder that the terrain was volatile, capable of sudden upheaval. He adjusted his course, aiming toward a small rise ahead, hoping it would provide a vantage point. Reaching the crest, he paused, peering over the edge. The terrain dropped sharply into an open expanse of snow, leading toward a faint, darker line, perhaps a cluster of trees or a thicket marking the edge of the forest. Beyond, a faint trail or road hinted at the proximity of human settlement, but it was still distant and uncertain. A surge of mixed emotions, relief tempered by doubt, washed over him. The journey was far from over, and dangers still lurked. Yet, a new understanding had taken root. The wilderness was no longer an enemy, but a partner, willing to reveal its secrets if approached with patience and respect. The lessons Lena and the wolves had imparted echoed in his mind. Listen carefully, adapt swiftly, trust the land's silent guidance. He took a final, steadying breath, feeling the cold seep into his bones, and pressed onward. Each step became an act of faith, an acknowledgement that he was part of this landscape, not merely a visitor. The snow crunched beneath him, a rhythmic reminder of his cautious hope. Descending from the rise, the trail ahead became clearer, less obstructed, more defined. His heart, though still heavy with fatigue, carried a flicker of optimism. The land remained indifferent, yet he was learning to read its language, to listen more intently. The wilderness was no longer just a barrier. It was a teacher revealing truths about resilience, patience, and humility. As he moved forward, a faint, distant sound caught his attention again, a low, resonant hum, like the distant echo of shifting ice or a distant avalanche. His senses sharpened, and he slowed, trying to decipher its origin. It was a reminder that the terrain's volatility was ever present, demanding constant vigilance. The trail curved gently, leading him toward a small rise. Reaching the top, he paused and looked out over the landscape. The open snow stretched before him, leading to a darker patch of trees. Then beyond that, the faint outline of a trail or road, an indication of proximity to civilization. But he knew better than to rush. The wilderness's lessons had taught him that haste could be dangerous. A new resolve settled within him. The land was no longer an adversary, but a partner in his survival. The trust he had begun to build with Lena's guidance and the wolves' silent example had shifted his perspective. He understood now that harmony with nature, listening, observing, respecting, was the key to moving forward. He pushed himself to continue, muscles protesting yet again, each step deliberate. The snow beneath his feet echoed his cautious optimism. The landscape was still harsh, still indifferent, but he was no longer entirely lost. He had gained insight, an understanding of the land's quiet language, and with it, a sense of agency. The faint outline of the trail grew clearer as he descended. His mind was sharper, his senses more attuned. The wilderness still held dangers, but he now saw it as a teacher rather than an enemy. The lessons learned here, through patience, observation, and trust, had begun to reshape his perception of strength and vulnerability. With renewed purpose, Alex moved forward, uncertain of what lay beyond the next bend, but confident that his journey was progressing. The land silence was no longer a threat, but a message waiting to be understood. Each step was a small act of faith, a testament to the bond forged through hardship and patience. The snow crunched beneath him, a steady rhythm matching his cautious hope. As he descended from the rise, the trail's outline sharpened, and his heart, despite its exhaustion, fluttered with a faint spark of optimism. The wilderness was still formidable, still unpredictable, but he was beginning to read its language, to listen, to trust. A subtle shift in a wind carried a new scent. Faint smoke, distant and faint but unmistakable. His senses sharpened further. This was not just the land's whispering. It was a sign. Someone was nearby. A new element had entered his journey. An ally, or perhaps a threat. He paused, weighing his options, knowing that the next steps could define his fate. The trail led him toward a small rise. Reaching the top, he looked out over the landscape, now more aware than ever. The snow-covered expanse stretched toward the darker line of trees, and beyond that, the faint outline of a road or trail hinted at civilization's proximity. But he understood the importance of patience. Rushing could undo everything. As he descended, the faint sound of voices reached his ears, distant but unmistakable. Human voices. Relief and caution mingled within him. He was closer to safety, but he also knew the wilderness still held surprises. Trusting his instincts, he moved toward the source, careful to remain hidden. The landscape around him was shifting, signs of recent activity, footprints in the snow, a broken branch or two. Someone had passed through recently. His grip tightened on the stone in his pocket, a reminder that tools and allies could be vital now. The land had shown him that survival depended on reading signs and acting with purpose. He approached a small clearing where faint smoke curled upward from a distant fire. Shadows flickered behind the trees, and voices grew clearer. Humans, perhaps travelers or settlers. He hesitated, weighing his options. Approaching directly could be dangerous, but avoiding them might mean losing the chance for help or information. Instead, he circled around cautiously, staying behind cover. As he observed, he noticed the group seemed cautious, alert, probably aware of the wilderness's dangers. Their presence was a sign that civilization was nearby, but so was the risk of confrontation. His experience had taught him to listen more than speak, to trust his instincts. A decision formed. He would approach, but only when he was sure he could do so safely. The land signals, faint footprints, the position of the fire guided him. He understood now that survival was about reading the subtle cues and responding with patience and humility. As he settled into a concealed spot, watching and waiting, he felt a shift within himself. The wilderness was no longer an obstacle, but a teacher, revealing its secrets gradually. His journey was no longer solely about escape, but about understanding, about forging a new relationship with the land and its inhabitants. The faint glow of the fire beckoned him, promising potential aid or peril. He took a deep breath, feeling the cold seep into his bones, and prepared to move forward, cautiously, deliberately, trusting that the lessons of patience and observation would guide him through the next phase of his journey. The trail ahead remained uncertain, but Alex's mind was clearer. The wilderness had begun to accept him, not as an intruder, but as a student. And with that realization, his resolve strengthened. Whatever lay beyond the next bend, he was no longer merely surviving. He was learning to live within the land's silent, patient voice. The cold air sliced through his jacket, sharper than before, as Alex stepped onto the quiet town's bus stop. The late afternoon sky was painted in muted grays, casting long shadows over the snow-blanketed pavement. Faint muffled sounds of distant activity drifted from the city beyond, but here, the stillness of winter reigned. His gaze fixed on the horizon, where the faint glow of buildings flickered through a haze of falling snow, a stark contrast to the vast white wilderness he had just escaped. Each exhalation formed a cloud that lingered briefly before dissolving into the crisp air, carrying with it the faint scent of exhaust and distant smoke from the town's few chimneys. He shifted his weight, hands gripping the frayed edges of his jacket sleeves, the rough fabric offering little comfort. His mind replayed recent days, battling the relentless cold, forging fragile bonds with Lena and the pack, trusting silently in their shared instinct for survival. Those memories felt distant now, like echoes fading into a dream he couldn't fully grasp. A strange warmth flickered within him, a fragile hope that maybe, amid this bleak landscape, change was possible. Suddenly, his attention was caught by movement at the edge of the pavement. A small, scruffy dog hesitated, ears drooping, eyes wide with uncertainty. Its tangled fur was streaked with dirt and snow, patches matted and clumped. It sniffed cautiously, tail flicking uncertainly as it took a tentative step forward. The creature paused, as if weighing his intentions, then slowly approached, paws crunching softly against the icy surface. Alex's first instinct was to freeze, wary of potential danger. Years in the wilderness had conditioned him to be alert, to interpret every sign. Yet, as the dog drew nearer, a different feeling stirred, an unfamiliar tenderness, a flicker of warmth that had long been buried beneath layers of distrust. He eased into a kneeling position, knees sinking into the snow, palms open in a non-threatening gesture. The dog halted a few steps away, tail flicking nervously. After a moment of hesitation, it edged closer, sniffing his outstretched hand. Its nose was cold and damp, yet the contact ignited a faint spark of reassurance within him. Memories surfaced, Lena's calm, unwavering gaze, her silent trust when danger loomed. Her quiet strength had challenged his assumptions about trust and fear, revealing that vulnerability could be a form of resilience. He hesitated, then extended his hand further, offering a tentative touch to the dog's scruffy head. Its fur was coarse beneath his fingers, but the warmth of its body pressed against his palm felt unexpectedly soothing. The animal didn't recoil. Instead, it pressed closer, nudging his hand with its nose before curling up at his feet. That simple act, born of cautious connection, felt like a small victory, a sign that even amid chaos, moments of genuine contact persisted. A gust of wind swept past, carrying the distant clang of a bell and the murmur of voices from the town. Alex's eyes lingered on the dog, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. Could he trust this creature? Could he allow himself to believe that the fragile bonds formed in the wilderness could survive the return to society's chaos? His hand brushed the dog's head again, feeling the faint pulse beneath the tangled fur, a reminder of life's persistence. From his pocket, he produced a small piece of dried meat, a rare treasure he had managed to hide among his supplies. Carefully, he broke it into tiny bits and offered them to the dog. It sniffed again, then delicately took the morsel, chewing slowly as if savoring the taste. This act of sharing was more than nourishment. It was a symbolic gesture, an acknowledgement that trust could be built through small, deliberate acts, even in a fractured world. As the dog ate, Alex's thoughts drifted to Lena's fierce protectiveness, her growl warning of danger, her unwavering loyalty. For a moment, he wondered if her instincts had been right, that listening to his intuition, even when uncertain, was the key to survival. The quiet companionship of the dog beside him seemed to reinforce that belief. The animal settled at his side, eyes gleaming with cautious optimism. Alex inhaled deeply, feeling the icy air fill his lungs, and allowed himself a rare pause. The wilderness had taught him resilience and patience, but here, amid unfamiliar surroundings, he realized that opening himself to connection was equally vital. The town's silence stretched around them, a silent promise or perhaps a reminder of everything he sought to leave behind. He reached out again, gently stroking the dog's rough coat, feeling the faint heartbeat beneath the tangled fur. The creature responded with a soft whimper, leaning into his touch, as if recognizing a kindred spirit. For the first time in a long while, Alex allowed himself to believe that the world beyond the wilderness might hold the promise of renewal. Fragile, uncertain, but tangible. He stood slowly, brushing snow from his knees, the dog following suit, trotting alongside him as he turned toward the town. Each step was deliberate, steady, as the cold wind whispered around them, carrying distant sounds, voices, footsteps, the faint hum of life awakening. The city was waiting, not as a threat, but as a place where new beginnings could take root. He did not look back. Instead, he moved forward, carrying with him the quiet reassurance of that moment, the fragile trust he had forged, the small spark of hope ignited amid the cold. The wilderness's lessons about resilience and patience had prepared him for this step. Perhaps in this new place, he could find not only refuge, but a way to piece himself back together. The journey was far from over, but the first tentative step had been taken, and that was enough.